Today I'm going to demonstrate how I make some of my stencils and mask. There are a couple things that I've done. The first one that I did is using just regular plastic acrylic dividers that you get at your office store. These are left over from school. And then I found some stencil patterns online that I wanted to use. You can also draw your own stencil pattern. And then you need a wood burning tool or an X-Acto knife. I got my wood burning tool at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, one of those, and I used my coupon. It comes with a lot of different tips, but the tip that I tend to use is this one that's angled. Let me zoom in and you can see that a little bit better. Let me stop this and I'll get set up and then I'll show you how to cut a stencil. Alright, I have it set up to cut a stencil. What I've done is I've put my printed image under a piece of glass, and then I've taken my divider and used some painter's tape to tape it down. Also keep a wet rag, because as you get plastic built up on your tip, it helps to clean it off. This is an example of one of the stencils that I've made. It's just a honeycomb stencil. And I will say that after I've used it with some acrylic paint, I actually like that the paint adds some weight to the stencil and sort of stiffens it up a little bit. Here's one of the first ones I did, and this stencil didn't work as well. The openings were quite small and it was a little difficult to do the fine detail. Today what I'm going to do is 4 little mini images that I want to use on my new 3x5 jelly plate. So basically, you're just going to work following the line that you can see in the image. And after I get a piece, tend to wipe the tip off. Then I usually use my X-Acto knife to pick it up. You might have a few places that you need to pull. Now you can keep these pieces here to use as a mask, but these are so tiny that I'm probably not going to mess with it today. But if I were doing a larger stencil, then I would probably keep some of those openings. It's real important that you leave some space between shapes, so I might need to modify this just a little bit, the pattern, as I work. Let me zoom in. I know it's going to be really hard to see this. But you can sort of see here where it's cutting. If your knife gets too hot, you can turn it off and let it cool down just a little bit. might need a new blade on my X-Acto knife, so that's why I'm struggling to get some of these small pieces up. If it hasn't broken free, you can go back and hit it again with the knife. Right there, it doesn't want to come free, so I'm going to hit it again. And just pulled on that piece. Get the idea, sort of. Let me see if I slide this piece of red paper under there, and you can sort of see the pattern that I've created. And this works real cool. Bit of white paint and a makeup sponge, and I'll just pounce through these that I've already cut. Let me lift up this tape so I can get this out and show you the results. And so you see very quickly I had an easy, affordable stencil. Alright, let me clean this up and I'll move on to the second demonstration. Alright, for the next kind of stencil, all you need is a pair of good scissors, maybe a Sharpie marker. I've got a couple here that I've made. On this one, you can see here that I just drew triangles. I cut those triangles out. Don't throw them away. They become masks. These are all the triangles. Some of the triangles I even took and cut the centers out of those. Now I did the same thing just using various boxes and rectangles. Again, don't throw those pieces away. I have a variety of boxes. I took a couple of the larger boxes and cut them up into some little strips. And I took a few and cut the centers out so that I would have some open square and rectangle shapes. And I like to overlap these when I'm on the jelly plate and make them almost interlocking and kind of give that 3D effect. But my favorite and most successful are the circles. And all I did was take a Sharpie marker my reach. And I'm going to just do an oval today. But basically I draw my oval. And then I drew a slightly larger oval. Then I took this and I folded it just so I could get right here. And using my scissors, I could get started. Once I got the opening, then I could just cut around. And then I would do the same thing for the outside ring. I actually really like the very skinny and fat rings and use them more than I do the larger pieces. So basically, with just a few cuts, I have three things I can use. I have an oval that I can lay on the jelly plate and use. I like to keep these tabs because they're great for lifting up. I have a skinny ring and I have an oval. Now if you decide you don't like something, you can trim it and adjust it to your needs. Now, I will tell you that when they get really covered with paint, sometimes that paint will come off on your jelly plate, but it'll leave this really cool mark that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But I'll soak them in hot water, and I'll just use my fingernail and pull off some of the built-up acrylic paint, and I've got them pretty much back to normal. Just have to be more careful when you're using the skinnier pieces that you don't tear it. But as cheap as it is, it's easy enough to replace. Okay, let me stop this and clean up, and I'll get the setup for my last stencil that I've made. All right, my last type of stencil is glue stencils. Now, I saw these done on a couple different YouTube videos. One of the videos suggested that you use acetate. Well, as a school teacher, I have lots of old transparencies. So the first thing I did was a series of circles on a piece of acetate. Well, it won't come off the acetate. But never fear, I feel like I can use it as a stamp on my jelly plate. I haven't had a chance to use it yet. But, so the next thing I did was I used a cutting mat that I had. The problem with this one is it worked, but when I went to take the glue off, it was very difficult to pull off, and some of my pieces broke off. I couldn't get the fine details that I wanted, so I resorted to just using my craft mat. Now, if you have one of the heavier silicone mats, like the baking silicone mats, I think it works probably a little bit better. You do have to be careful. I have noticed some holes. Since I did that, I did notice some holes in my Ranger mat. But basically, you just need an old-fashioned glue gun, one of the first craft things that most of us probably had. And then you just draw your shapes. They can be doodles, intentional. You want to make sure they connect. If you're trying to lift it off as one piece. Then you want to set that aside to cool. While that's cooling, before I lift it up, let me show you some of the ones that I've actually done. Okay, I did this one. It's sort of like a bird's nest. This is a larger one I did, which was just more scribbles. I like to do a lot of abstract. I've also been using some of the acetate to separate them because they do want to stick together. And then I've just been storing them in a box with acetate between them. More circles. Now this one I took once it had started to cool, I kind of flattened it using a piece of plastic divider because I like that more flattened style. And I just gave it a little pressure. Oh, it's too soon on this one. Yeah, I did that one too soon. So I'll have to let that cool and use it more like a stamp. But that's what I mean about if it's too hot, it'll stick to the plastic divider. Another bird's nest one. I did some interlocking squares. On this one, I tried to do some vines, just some flourishes, sort of. Don't throw your little blobs away. Peel those off and use those. Little strings can all be used individually on the jelly plate. And you may have to just work it just a little bit once it's cooled to get it off your craft mat. That's why I said I think one of those heavier duty baking silicone mats probably work a little bit better. And I think this is going to come off of here if I give it just enough time. But like I said, I can just use it like a stamp and stamp into the jelly plate. But I like the versatility of being able to peel them off. We got another piece of glue and I'll show you another one. And I won't flatten it. Alright, here we go. Take two. Alright, so there's a couple new shapes. I know they're hard to see on the camera. See if I zoom in a little bit, you can see I have a flower and a butterfly. I'll take them off in just a minute when they cool, and I'll show you on a piece of cardstock. Alright, my stencils have glued, have dried and cooled off, and you can see that they're really easy to remove, but I still want to be a little gentle, especially in those thinner areas. You see, there's my dragonfly. Found that the easiest way is to get several starting points and work from the outside in. And there's my flower. All right. While I was waiting for that glue to dry, I created my other two stencils that I wanted. And I'm going to use a little Lindy spray and turquoise on a piece of white cardstock. Now I am going to just put a little bit of painter's tape and tape these down, since it's the first time I've used them. And they don't really have any weight to them. As I use them and they get some acrylic paint built up on them, I found that they lay a little flatter. Now, the other thing you need to be careful about when you first use them is they might have some rough little bits that could harm your jelly plate. Now you can go back through with your X-Acto knife and get those off, but I've also found that once you use it and they get covered with acrylic paint, that those kind of go away. Alright. I'm just going to lightly spray this through the stencil. It's not going to be the best because it's so wet, but I thought it'd be real fast to get a baby wipe that's no longer wet. And I'm just going to blot. Remove some of the excess sprays around the edges. Remove my painter's tape and stencils. And you can see very quickly that I got 3 quick and easy stencils. Now I will tell you, you'll get better results once you use them with acrylic paint. The spray tends to go out under, and this cardstock's going to bleed a little bit when it's sprayed. So I don't usually use them for sprays. Now, the 4th type of stencil I'm unable to do, but it's my next project, which is to use a Cricut or a Silhouette Cameo, some type of cutting machine to cut your own stencils, then it's unlimited possibilities. Thanks for watching.